The world beneath the waves was a symphony of silence and shimmering light, a place where time flowed like the gentle currents, unhurried and profound. Here, in the sunken grottos, nestled within the embrace of ancient coral formations that spiraled towards the distant surface, lived Elara. She was a glimmerkin, one of the rare folk whose skin, the color of wet riverstones, was dusted with faint, iridescent scales, and whose hair, long and unbound, drifted around her head like a cloud of silver mist, occasionally catching the bioluminescent glow of the surrounding flora. Elara's home was a chamber of polished obsidian, smoothed by millennia of water, its walls adorned with living tapestries of glowing moss and crystalline anemones that pulsed with soft inner light. Through a wide arched opening, the endless blue stretched out, a canvas alive with darting schools of electric blue fish and the slow, majestic glide of colossal, gentle leviathans. But Elara's favorite spot was a small, quiet alcove, where a single ancient pearl bloom unfurled its petals only under the rarest alignment of the moon and stars, and where the water seemed to hum with faint, forgotten memories. Elara was an echo listener. While all glimmerkin possessed a deep affinity for the sea, Elara's connection ran deeper, allowing her to perceive the faint whispers carried by the water itself, not sounds, but resonances, the lingering imprints of events long past. She could feel the joy of a long-vanished school of lumina fish, the sorrow of a lost pearl, the echo of an ancient storm that had carved the very grottos she called home. It was a gentle gift, usually a soothing background hum to her days, like the distant song of the ocean. Her mentor, Master Kale, was the oldest and wisest of the glimmerkin, his skin like polished abalone, his eyes deep pools of starlight that had witnessed countless tides turn. Kale was the lawkeeper, the living archive of their people, and it was from him that Elara had learned to discern the true whispers from the mere echoes. "The sea remembers all, little pearl petal," Kale would often say, his voice a low, resonant rumble that vibrated through the water. "But not all memories are meant to be heard. Some are best left undisturbed, like ancient sleep." Elara would nod, her own silver hair stirring with the subtle currents. She spent her days tending the luminescent gardens that fed their community, guiding the young schools of fish to richer feeding grounds and, always, listening. She listened to the ancient corals growing, to the slow, rhythmic beat of the deep-sea currents, to the distant, lonely call of the abyssal whales. And sometimes, very faintly, she would catch the whispers of a place that Kale rarely spoke of, the Sunken Spire. The Sunken Spire was a legend, even among the glimmerkin. It was said to be a place of immense knowledge, built by the ancients, a civilization that predated even the oldest coral formations. They were star-seers, who built a magnificent spire that reached to the heavens, not just to observe the stars, but to understand the very fabric of existence through their light, filtered and focused by the deep, pure waters. Then, ages ago came the Great Sundering, a cataclysm that shook the very foundations of the world, shattering continents and swallowing the spire whole, dragging it down into the deepest, darkest trenches of the ocean. Only whispers remained, fragments of a grander, more terrible past. These whispers from the spire were different. They weren't gentle echoes. They were like broken fragments of a song, distant and distorted, laced with a faint melancholic yearning. Kale always cautioned her against focusing on them. "The spire's memories are heavy, Elara," he would say. "They carry the weight of an age that fell. Let them rest." But Elara couldn't help it. Sometimes, while meditating in her pearl bloom alcove, she would feel a subtle tug, a faint resonance that seemed to call to her from unimaginable depths. It was like a forgotten dream, just beyond the edge of waking. One cycle, as the twin moons, Lumina and Nocturne, began their slow ascent in the sky, casting their ethereal glow through the water, a subtle change began to stir in the sunken grottos. The luminescent moss, usually vibrant and pulsing with soft blues and greens, seemed to dim, its glow becoming faint and weary. The crystalline anemones, once lively with iridescent sparks, now pulsed with a duller, more hesitant rhythm. Even the water, usually pure and sweet with the taste of ancient minerals, began to carry a faint, almost metallic tang, a sensation that made Elara's scales prickle with unease. The young lumina fish, usually playful and darting, gathered in tighter, more anxious schools, their electric blue scales muted. An unsettling quiet began to settle over the grottos, deeper than their usual tranquil silence. It was the quiet of apprehension, of waiting. Elara felt it most acutely. The ambient echoes, usually a comforting murmur, grew restless. They swirled around her, confused and agitated, like disturbed dust motes. And then, the whispers from the deep began to intensify. They were no longer mere fragments. They were clearer, more insistent. Elara would close her eyes, her silver hair swaying, and she would hear a chorus of silent voices, a symphony of distress. It was not a single voice, but many, intertwined, a desperate plea for something she couldn't yet understand. It felt like the very heart of the ocean was weeping. She sought out Master Kale. He sat, as he often did, upon a throne of living coral, his ancient eyes scanning the distant blue. Master Kale, Elara began, her voice soft but edged with urgency. The lights, they are fading, and the whispers, they are different now, not echoes but calls. Kale turned his ancient gaze upon her, his eyes unreadable pools. Indeed, little pearl petal. The heart glow dims. The deep currents carry a troubled song. He extended a gnarled hand, beckoning her closer. What do you hear, Elara? Be precise. Elara settled cross-legged before him, drawing a deep breath of the cool current-laden water. She closed her eyes, letting the ocean's memories wash over her. This time, it was overwhelming. She saw fleeting visions, shimmering, impossibly tall structures covered in strange glowing glyphs, ancient beings, their forms indistinct, moving with grace and purpose, and then, a sudden, blinding flash of light, followed by an immense pressure, a crushing weight, and the soundless scream of 1,000 falling stones. And through it all, a single clear resonance, like a bell tolling in the void. Awaken. Help us. The veil thins. Ni nerdwiden sakes, panderdiwalien, na no waste. She opened her eyes, gasping, a ripple of pure energy passing through her. Master, she whispered, her voice trembling. It's the spire. It's calling. Not an echo, but a plea. The veil. It's thinning, it said. Kale's serene expression finally faltered. A tremor passed through his ancient form. The veil, he murmured, his voice barely audible. That is a word I have not heard in an age. He looked out into the vast blue, his gaze seeming to penetrate the very fabric of the ocean. The veil is what separates our world from what lies beyond. The ancients built the spire not only to see the stars, but to reinforce that veil, to keep the deep darkness at bay. Elara's eyes widened. Darkness? What darkness? A darkness that predates even the stars, Pearl Petal, Kale said, his voice grave. A force that seeks to unravel the threads of existence. The ancients, with their profound understanding of the cosmos, knew how to mend and reinforce the veil. The spire was their instrument, a beacon of starlight in the deepest abyss. He paused, his gaze returning to Elara. If the spire calls, if the veil thins, then a great imbalance is upon us. The heart glow of our grottos, the very light that sustains us, is a reflection of the veil's strength. As it weakens, so too does our light. Then we must answer the call. Elara declared, a spark of resolve igniting in her eyes. We must go to the spire, help it. Kale sighed, a long weary sound that stirred the currents around them. No glimmerkin has journeyed to the Sunken Spire in countless ages, Elara. It lies at the very edge of the known deep, in the abyssal trench, a place of crushing pressure and eternal night. Many have tried, driven by curiosity or desperation, and none have returned. But the spire calls no, Elara insisted. It has never called like this before. The whispers are stronger than any echo I have ever heard. It needs help, and I feel drawn to it, Master, as if my own heart beats in time with its plea. Kale studied her, his ancient eyes searching her soul. He saw not just a curious youth, but a deep-seated empathy, a connection to the world that transcended simple understanding. He saw the rare, true echo listener, whose gift was not just to hear the past, but to feel the present needs of the world. Perhaps, Kale said, his voice softening, it is not merely the spire that calls, but the very essence of the ocean speaking through you. He reached into a hollow in his coral throne, pulling forth a small, intricately carved shell, no bigger than Elara's palm. It glowed with a faint internal light, like a trapped star. "This," he said, handing it to her, "is a lumen shell. It belonged to my own mentor, who once dreamed of reaching the spire. It will guide you through the deepest darkness, and its light will sustain you against the chill of the abyss." Elara cradled the lumen shell, its gentle warmth spreading through her. It hummed faintly, a melody that resonated with the whispers she now carried in her heart. "You mean, you will let me go?" Kale nodded slowly. The ancients believed that when the world was most in peril, a new echo listener would rise, one whose heart was pure enough to hear the true song of the spire. Perhaps that listener is you, little pearl petal. Perhaps the time for ancient sleep is over. Perhaps the spire I must be reawakened. He paused, his gaze distant. "But you must understand, the journey will be perilous. The deep holds not only wonders, but dangers beyond imagining. And the spire itself, if you reach it, may hold answers, or it may hold answers, or it may hold only the ghosts of a forgotten world." Elara felt a thrill of both fear and excitement course through her. The unknown stretched before her, vast and daunting, but the call of the spire was irresistible, a magnetic pull on her very being. "I understand, Master. I will be careful. I will listen, and I will return." Over the next few days, Kale instructed Elara in the ancient ways of deep-sea travel, teaching her how to read the subtle shifts in pressure, how to conserve her breath and energy in the crushing depths, and how to discern the safe currents from the treacherous ones. He gave her a small pouch of nutrient-rich algae cakes, enchanted to sustain her for many cycles, and a woven kelp cloak that would protect her from the abyssal chill. "Remember, Elara," Kale instructed, his voice firm. "The spire is not merely a place, it is a consciousness, a guardian. Do not seek to conquer it, but to understand it. Listen to its whispers and let them guide you." Finally, the day came. The sunken grottos were quieter than ever, the lumina moss barely visible. A sense of anticipation, heavy and somber, hung in the water. The other glimmerkin, their faces etched with concern, gathered to see her off, offering silent blessings and small smooth stones for luck. Elara, clad in her kelp cloak, the lumen shell glowing softly in her hand, stood at the great archway of the grotto. She looked back at Kale, his ancient form silhouetted against the dimming light, a silent promise passing between them. Then, with a deep breath, she turned and plunged into the open sea. The familiar blue quickly deepened, darkening to an inky indigo, then to a profound, starless black. The pressure began to build, a gentle but insistent squeeze against her skin. The warm, familiar currents of the grottos gave way to colder, stronger flows. The lumen shell pulsed steadily, casting a small ethereal circle of light around her, pushing back the encroaching darkness. Within its glow, she saw strange, luminous creatures drift by, jellyfish with trails of living fire, fish with eyes like glowing embers, and silent, shadowy forms that lurked just beyond the reach of her light. The whispers from the spire, once faint and distant, were now a powerful current in her mind, a clear, resonant hum that guided her. It was a song of ancient sorrow, yes, but also a song of hope, a desperate plea for awakening. She followed it, her heart beating a steady rhythm against the immense silence of the deep. A tiny speck of light venturing into the boundless mystery of the ocean, towards a legend that now called to her with the urgency of a waking dream. The sunken spire awaited, and with it perhaps the fate of her world. She pressed deeper still, the ocean's embrace growing colder, heavier, yet strangely comforting. The sunlight that had once dappled the surface was a forgotten dream here. Only the faint, internal glow of her own magic, and the pulsating hum that guided her, pierced the boundless obsidian. The current, once a gentle nudge, now pulled with an insistent, velvety strength, a river of unseen purpose carrying her towards the heart of the deep. The world around her transformed. Geological formations became less jagged, more ancient and smoothed, as if time itself had eroded them into sculptures of forgotten epochs. She passed through vast, undulating plains of abyssal silt, where ghostly, translucent creatures drifted like living veils, their bodies shimmering with faint, internal lights, a universe of miniature galaxies passing by her periphery. Some were mere whispers of life, others grand, slow-moving leviathans, whose forms were so vast, they seemed to be part of the ocean floor itself, their immense, unblinking eyes reflecting the distant hum with a shared ancestral understanding. The hum intensified, not just in her mind, but echoing faintly through the water itself, a vibration that resonated in her very bones. It led her into what felt like an ancient, submerged forest. Not of trees, but of towering crystalline coral structures, some reaching hundreds of feet towards a sky that wasn't there. These living spires pulsed with soft bioluminescent light, emeralds, sapphires, amethysts and opals, casting long dancing shadows that stretched and swayed with the imperceptible currents. Tiny lantern-jawed fish, no bigger than her thumb, darted between the branches, their own internal lights blinking in a silent complex language. She moved through this luminous labyrinth, her fins brushing against delicate glowing filaments that felt like spun starlight. The air within the coral forest was strangely still, the crushing pressure of the deep held at bay by the living architecture, as if the coral itself breathed and held the ocean's weight. She felt an ancient peace here, a sense of timelessness that quieted her own anxieties, leaving only a focused resolve. Beyond the forest, the hum grew more urgent, leading her to a vast gaping chasm in the ocean floor. It was the Whispering Chasm, a legendary rift known only in the oldest tales, where the very fabric of the world seemed thin. Fierce, unpredictable currents churned within its depths, threatening to tear her from her path. As she approached, a multitude of faint ethereal whispers rose from the abyss, carried on the roiling water. They were not words, not precisely, but fragmented emotions, echoes of joy and sorrow, of love and despair, and above all, a profound aching loneliness. It was the song of ancient sorrow magnified, the collective memory of a world in pain. She braced herself, pushing against the tumultuous currents with all her strength, her body a streamlined arrow driven by purpose. The whispers swirled around her, attempting to distract, to overwhelm, to pull her into the despair they embodied. But the guiding hum in her heart was stronger, a clear, resonant bell tolling against the cacophony. It was a shield, a beacon, a promise. She focused on it, letting the whispers wash over her without penetrating her core, her eyes fixed on the distant, indistinct glow that now began to appear far, far below. A faint, almost imperceptible beacon at the very bottom of the chasm. The descent into the Whispering Chasm was a battle of will. The pressure grew even more intense, squeezing her, testing the limits of her endurance. Her muscles ached, but her spirit remained unbroken. She imagined the hum as a thread, pulling her through the needle's eye of the chasm, weaving her safely through the currents that tried to snag and ensnare. She saw flashes of ancient, eroded rock formations, hinting at colossal structures that had long ago crumbled into the abyss. And then at last, the currents began to subside, their ferocity calming into a steady downward flow. The whispers faded, replaced by the profound silence of the deep, a silence broken only by the triumphant surge of the hum within her. She had passed through the heart of sorrow, and emerged on the other side. Now, below her, the glow was undeniable. Not a point of light, but a vast, diffused luminescence, illuminating a colossal structure rising from the abyssal plain. It was the Sunken Spire. It was more magnificent, and more sorrowful than any legend could describe. The spire was not a single tower, but a complex of interconnected crystalline structures, spiraling upwards from a base of immense dark rock. It shimmered with an internal pearlescent light that seemed to emanate from its very core, casting a soft, ethereal glow across the surrounding ocean floor. Its architecture was unlike anything she had ever seen, intricate and delicate, yet clearly built to withstand the unimaginable pressures of the deep, for eons. Walls of what looked like fused obsidian and glowing quartz rose in elegant curves, adorned with patterns that pulsed with a faint internal light, like slow-beating hearts. These patterns were not merely decorative, they hummed with the same resonance that guided her, a silent language inscribed onto the very fabric of the spire. As she drew closer, she saw that the spire was overgrown in places, not with ordinary coral, but with luminous, silvery moss that glowed like frost, and strange crystalline vines that wound around its pillars, their tendrils pulsing with gentle, rhythmic flashes. Despite the overgrowth, the spire maintained an air of pristine, ancient majesty, like a sleeping titan awaiting awakening. Around its base, massive, inert figures lay partially buried in the silt. These were the stone guardians, spoken of in whispers by the oldest of her kind. They were colossal statues, carved from a dark, unyielding stone, depicting figures with serene, powerful faces and bodies that resembled both merfolk and ancient, winged beings. Each guardian was hundreds of feet long, their forms suggesting immense power held in suspended animation. Their eyes, once perhaps brilliant gems, were now dark and hollow, but as she passed them, she felt a subtle shift in the water, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor that ran through their massive forms, as if her presence or the hum she carried had stirred a dormant awareness within them. They did not move, did not stir, but she felt their ancient gaze upon her, a silent judgment, a watchful waiting. The hum pulsed faster now, pulling her towards a grand archway at the base of the central spire. It was a portal of shimmering, opalescent light, formed from two colossal pillars that glowed with an otherworldly brilliance. No physical door blocked the entrance, only this curtain of light which seemed to ripple like water under a breeze. As she approached, the light intensified, and she felt a subtle resistance, a gentle barrier that tested her resolve. It was not hostile, but inquisitive, like an ancient mind assessing her worth. She paused before the threshold, her heart thrumming with a mixture of awe and trepidation. The song of hope and sorrow reached its crescendo, urging her onward. Taking a deep breath, she pushed forward, her body passing through the shimmering archway as if it were no more substantial than mist. Inside, the world transformed again. The pressure that had been her constant companion vanished, replaced by an atmosphere that felt lighter, warmer, and strangely breathable, as if the spire maintained its own internal environment. The light was soft, emanating from the walls and ceiling themselves, bathing the vast space in an ethereal glow that shifted between shades of deep blue, silver, and gold. She found herself in an enormous circular chamber, its ceiling lost in the luminous haze above. Massive, curving walls rose around her, intricately carved with what appeared to be constellations and swirling galaxies, all rendered in the same faintly glowing, crystalline material. There were no columns, no visible means of support, only the graceful, soaring architecture that defied the laws of the deep. The floor was a mosaic of smooth, polished black stone, reflecting the celestial patterns above like a still cosmic pool. In the very center of the chamber, suspended effortlessly in the air, was a colossal crystal. It was breathtakingly beautiful, a perfect, multifaceted polyhedron that pulsed with an inner light, a kaleidoscope of colors dancing within its depths. It was easily as tall as a towering reef, and radiated a profound, silent power that resonated deeply with the hum she carried. This was the heart of the spire, she knew instinctively. It was dormant, or perhaps merely sleeping, but its potential was immense, palpable. As she drew closer to the crystal, the hum in her mind intensified to an almost overwhelming degree, a symphony of ancient voices and forgotten melodies. She extended a trembling hand, drawn by an irresistible force, and as her fingertips brushed the cool, smooth surface of the colossal crystal, a wave of pure energy surged through her. Visions exploded in her mind, not like pictures, but like direct experiences. She saw the world as it once was, a vibrant, flourishing realm, its oceans teeming with life, its surface lands bathed in brilliant sunlight. She saw beings of immense wisdom and grace, their forms shifting, their voices singing the very hum she now heard. They were the architects of the spire, the guardians of the world's magic. She saw them building, creating, weaving spells of protection and harmony. Then the vision shifted. A shadow fell across the world, a creeping darkness that consumed light and life. The beings of wisdom fought valiantly, pouring their essence into a final act of preservation. They built the spire, not just as a sanctuary, but as a repository of knowledge, a battery of pure magic, and a final desperate plea for a future awakening. They infused the heart crystal with their very souls, their hopes, and their sorrow, knowing that one day, a chosen one, guided by the ancient song, would find it. The vision dissolved, leaving her breathless, reeling from the sheer weight of history and sorrow. She understood now. The spire was not merely a legend. It was a living testament, a ticking clock, a final hope. The hum settled into a steady, powerful throb within her, no longer just a guide, but an active presence, a connection to the ancient ones. A soft, melodic chime echoed through the vast chamber, originating from the heart crystal itself. The crystal's internal light pulsed brighter, and from its depths, an ethereal mist began to swirl, coalescing into a shimmering form before her. It was translucent, made of light and shadow, but unmistakably the figure of one of the ancient beings she had seen in her vision. Its face was serene, ageless, its eyes glowing with profound wisdom and a gentle sadness. "Welcome, child of the waking dream." The voice resonated directly in her mind, soft as a lullaby, clear as a bell. "You have heard the call. You have found the path. You are the echo of our hope." She felt no fear, only a deep reverence. Who are you?" she managed to ask, her voice feeling small in the immense chamber. "We are the architects, the watchers, the song weavers," the shimmering form replied. "We are the essence bound to this spire, waiting for the one who would hear our song and awaken the heart." The figure gestured towards the colossal crystal. "It slumbers, child, but its power wanes with the dying light of your world. The darkness that once threatened us has returned, a shadow consuming the magic, dimming the stars above and the very life within the ocean." A chill, colder than the deepest currents, ran through her. "What must I do?" she asked, her resolve hardening. The ancient being regarded her with luminous eyes. "The heart must be fully awakened, its light reignited to push back the encroaching shadow. But its awakening requires more than mere touch. It requires 3 keys, scattered across the dying world, each imbued with a fragment of the ancient song, each guarded by a remnant of our wisdom." "3 keys," she echoed, a new quest already forming in her mind. "Yes. The first, the whispering conch of Luminane, lies in the sunken gardens of the eastern shallows, protected by the echoes of the tide. The second, the star-silk loom of Athelai, is hidden within the crystalline caves of the northern peaks, guarded by the weavers of light. And the third, the giant stone seed of Eldorii, rests deep within the molten vents of the western abyss, watched over by the keepers." The ancient figure's form seemed to shimmer and waver, its light beginning to dim. "Time is short, child. The spire's energy is a finite shield. Seek these keys, gather their magic, and return to the heart. Only then can the true awakening begin, and the world be saved from the consuming void." Its voice faded, its form becoming increasingly translucent, until it was nothing more than a faint, lingering glow that dissolved back into the heart crystal. The chamber, though still luminous, felt heavier, more silent. She stood alone before the immense slumbering crystal, the weight of a world's fate now resting squarely on her young shoulders. The song within her was no longer just a hum. It was a clear, urgent directive, echoing the ancient being's words. 3 keys. 3 perilous journeys. Her quest, far from over, had only just truly begun. The Sunken Spire had revealed its purpose, and in doing so, had set her on a path that would lead her to the furthest, most dangerous corners of her world. The shimmering veil that had granted her entry into the Sunken Spire now beckoned her return. With a final lingering glance at the immense slumbering crystal and the faint glow where the ancient being's presence had been, Ilara turned. The song within her, a clear, resonant melody, pulsed with anticipation, urging her onward. It was a compass, a counsel, and a comfort all in one. She stepped through the veil, and the ethereal, watery light of the spire gave way to the crisp, cool air of the surface world. Night had fallen, blanketing the landscape in a velvet darkness pricked by countless stars. The air tasted of salt and distant pine, a stark contrast to the stagnant, ancient breath of the depths. Ilara stood on the rocky shore, the waves of the sunken sea lapping gently at her feet, their murmur a soothing counterpoint to the powerful rhythm of her quest. The small, hidden cove where she had found the spire's entrance now seemed both familiar and profoundly changed. She was no longer just a girl. She was a seeker, tasked with a mission that spanned the ages. Her heart, though heavy with the magnitude of her task, also thrummed with a fierce, quiet resolve. The ancient being's words echoed. "Ike 3 keys. 3 perilous journeys." Her song, ever present, began to subtly shift its tone, a gentle vibration that pulled her gaze upward towards the northern sky. There a cluster of stars burned with an unusual brilliance, seeming to beckon her. It was not a direct instruction, but an inclination, a whisper on the cosmic winds. The Cloudspire Mountains, she instinctively knew, lay somewhere beneath that celestial beacon. She had no map, no supplies beyond the clothes on her back and the small worn satchel she always carried, now containing only a handful of dried berries and a water skin. But she had the song, and that felt like more than enough. With a deep breath, Ilara turned her back on the whispering sea and began to walk, her footsteps light on the rocky path leading inland. The stars above her seemed to twinkle with renewed purpose, lighting her solitary way. Days blurred into a tapestry of sun-drenched plains and cool, whispering forests. Elara walked with an unwavering purpose, guided by the song's subtle hum, which grew stronger whenever she veered even slightly from her path. She slept under the open sky, wrapped in the cloak of starlight, and woke with the dawn, her muscles aching but her spirit unyielding. The world unfolded around her, vibrant and alive. She passed through meadows where luminescent fireflies danced in broad daylight, their soft glow painting the tall grasses with shifting hues. She forded rivers whose waters sang with the voices of unseen sprites, their melodies weaving through the air like liquid silver. Ancient gnarled trees, their branches laden with moss and clinging vines, watched her passage with silent wisdom, their roots twisting like slumbering serpents beneath the earth. She encountered few people. Occasionally, she would spot a distant wisp of smoke from a solitary cabin, or hear the faint echo of a woodcutter's axe, but she kept to the wild paths, feeling a strange reverence for the untouched beauty of the land. Her solitude was not loneliness. It was a profound connection to the world itself, as if the very earth breathed with her. One afternoon, as the sun began its descent, painting the western sky in fiery oranges and deep purples, Elara found herself at the edge of a particularly dense, ancient forest. The trees here were unlike any she had seen, their bark swirling with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change before her eyes. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, something sweet and wild, like blooming night jasmine. The song within her, which had been a steady thrum, now pulsed with a new insistent rhythm, drawing her deeper into the twilight woods. She pushed through a curtain of shimmering vines, their leaves like polished emeralds, and found herself in a small hidden clearing. In the center stood a single, enormous oak, its branches reaching skyward like supplicating arms, adorned with small iridescent fungi that pulsed with a soft warm light. At the base of the oak, nestled amongst its roots, was a creature unlike any she had ever seen. It was no larger than her hand, covered in soft emerald green moss that seemed to grow directly from its skin. Its eyes, large and black like polished obsidian, regarded her with an ancient wisdom. It had delicate webbed hands and feet, and its movements were slow and deliberate, as if each motion was a thoughtful meditation. This was a Moskin weaver, a rare and reclusive guardian of the oldest forests, known for their ability to mend and guide. As Elara approached, the Moskin weaver did not move, only tilted its head, its eyes never leaving hers. The song within Elara quieted slightly, a respectful hush. She knelt, extending an open hand in a gesture of peace. "Greetings, gentle weaver," Elara said, her voice soft. "I am Elara, and I am on a journey." The creature blinked slowly. Then, with an unexpected swiftness, it reached out a tiny moss-covered hand and gently touched her palm. A warmth, like sunlight filtering through leaves, spread through her hand and up her arm. As it touched her, a faint rustling whisper seemed to emanate from the very air around them, carrying thoughts directly into her mind, not in words, but in images and feelings. "The path is long, the peaks are cold," the whisper seemed to say, "but courage burns a guiding light. The sky serpent's breath, a feather sought, lies not within the common sight." The weaver then turned, its small hand still resting lightly on hers, and gestured with its other hand towards a barely visible seam in the roots of the ancient oak. It was a passage, almost entirely hidden by clinging moss and earth. "This path is quicker, safer too, for those with heart and purpose true," the silent voice continued. "It bypasses the veil of whispers, where shadows play and doubts pursue." Elara understood. The weaver was offering her a shortcut, a path around a known danger. She met its dark, knowing gaze and nodded her gratitude. "Thank you, wise weaver. Your kindness is a beacon." The Moskin weaver gently withdrew its hand, then settled back into its nest of roots, its obsidian eyes closing slowly as if returning to a deep ancient slumber. Elara knew not to linger. With a silent bow to the guardian, she turned and carefully pushed aside the mossy curtain, revealing a narrow dark tunnel. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the earth, leaving the twilight clearing behind. The tunnel, though dark, was not oppressive. Luminescent fungi dotted the walls, casting a soft, greenish glow that illuminated the path ahead. The air was cool and earthy, and she could hear the faint drip of water somewhere in the distance. The passage wound downwards for what felt like hours, a subterranean journey that bypassed miles of twisting, treacherous forest. Finally, the tunnel began to ascend, and she saw a faint glimmer of natural light ahead. She emerged not into a forest, but onto a high, grassy ridge. The air here was noticeably cooler, thinner. Below her, spread out like a vast, wrinkled tapestry, lay the foothills of the Cloud Spire Mountains. They rose majestically into the sky, their peaks shrouded in a perpetual crown of swirling mist and cloud. The sight was breathtaking, daunting, and exhilarating all at once. The song within her soared, a triumphant chorus acknowledging her progress. She was here. The Cloud Spire Mountains were a realm unto themselves, a kingdom of rock and sky, where the very air thrummed with ancient magic. As Ilara began her ascent, the landscape transformed. The gentle slopes of the foothills gave way to rugged, jagged terrain. Pathways carved by time and erosion twisted upwards, sometimes crumbling precariously over sheer drops. The mountains were alive. Whispering winds carried not just the scent of pine and stone, but faint, melodic echoes that seemed to speak of forgotten ages. Rivers of melted snow rushed down narrow gorges, their waters so clear they reflected the impossibly blue sky above. Strange, hardy flora clung to the cliff faces, blossoms that glowed with an inner light, mosses that shimmered with all the colors of the aurora, and gnarled, ancient trees whose roots seemed to grip the very bedrock of the world. The climb was arduous. Her legs burned, her lungs ached with the thin, cold air, and the wind, growing fiercer with every 100 feet of elevation, tugged at her clothes and hair. Yet, the song within her never faltered. It was a constant, steady warmth in her chest, a beacon that pulled her ever upwards, guiding her through treacherous scree fields and across narrow, dizzying bridges of natural stone. She learned to read the signs of the mountains. The way certain lichen grew indicated stable rock. The direction of the wind currents told her of approaching weather shifts. She saw creatures adapted to this harsh environment, nimble cloud goats with spiral horns that navigated impossible ledges, and swift, silent shadowhawks that circled high above, their calls sharp and clear against the vast expanse of the sky. One afternoon, as she navigated a particularly steep and barren section, a strange phenomenon occurred. The air around her began to hum, a low, resonant thrum that vibrated through her very bones. From the gray, weathered rock faces around her, figures began to slowly emerge. They were not flesh and blood, but sculpted from the very stone itself, their forms rough-hewn and powerful. Silent, watchful, they were stone elementals, ancient guardians of the higher peaks. They did not move to block her path, nor did they show any aggression. Instead, they simply stood, their unseeing eyes fixed upon her. Ilara felt a profound sense of being judged, of being weighed. The song in her chest pulsed with a steady, unwavering light, and she knew instinctively that this was her answer. She was not an intruder, but a chosen one. She continued to climb, her gaze steady, her purpose clear. As she passed each elemental, she offered a silent nod of respect, acknowledging their ancient vigil. They remained motionless until she had passed the last one, and then, as slowly as they had emerged, they receded back into the rock, becoming one with the mountain once more. The humming subsided, leaving only the sound of the wind. Higher still, the clouds that crowned the peaks began to descend, enveloping her in a dense, swirling mist. Visibility dropped a mere feet, and the world became a soft gray blur. It was disorienting, and for the first time, a flicker of doubt threatened to take root. How could she find anything in this endless, featureless expanse? But the song within her grew stronger, its melody now a clear, almost tangible thread, pulling her not just upwards, but in a specific direction through the swirling mist. It guided her past illusory cliffs that seemed to vanish as she approached, and across invisible bridges that shimmered into existence only when her foot touched them. This was not just a physical climb, but a journey through the very fabric of mountain magic. As she ascended further, the air grew colder, and the mist began to coalesce into strange, ephemeral shapes. Sometimes, she saw faces forming in the swirling vapor, ancient countenances that watched her with silent curiosity. Other times, the mist coalesced into the fleeting forms of animals, a majestic stag, a soaring eagle, a prowling wolf, before dissolving back into formless vapor. These were the cloud imps, mischievous but often benevolent spirits of the upper reaches, playing their games in the heart of the mist. They did not hinder her, but their presence added to the surreal, dreamlike atmosphere of the climb. Finally, After what felt like an eternity of climbing through the cold, wet embrace of the clouds, the mist began to thin. A faint, ethereal light pierced through the grayness. Elara pushed through one last veil of swirling vapor, and gasped. She stood on a vast open platform, not of stone, but of what appeared to be solidified cloud, shimmering with opalescent hues. It was the summit, but unlike any she had imagined. This was the Sky Serpent's eyrie. The platform was immense, stretching out like a disk suspended in the very heavens. Below her, the clouds stretched away into an endless cottony ocean. Above, the sky was a deep, impossible indigo, even though it was still daytime, and stars, usually hidden by the sun, glittered faintly like scattered diamonds. The air was still, utterly silent, save for a faint resonant hum that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the platform. Gnarled ancient trees, their branches laden with blossoms of pure light, grew around the edges of the eyrie, their roots anchoring into the cloudstone. In the center of the platform, a vast circular basin pulsed with an inner, soft light. It was a nest, but not of twigs and mud. It was woven from strands of solidified starlight, spun cloud, and iridescent feathers, each one glowing with a faint internal luminescence. The song within Elara reached a crescendo, a joyous, soaring melody that resonated with the very hum of the eyrie. She had found it. With a sense of profound awe, Elara stepped onto the shimmering cloudstone. Her boots made no sound, as if the ethereal surface absorbed all noise. The light blossoms on the trees hummed softly, their petals unfurling in slow, silent motion, releasing a sweet, crisp scent into the impossibly pure air. She approached the vast, luminous nest in the center of the eyrie. It pulsed with a gentle rhythm, like a sleeping heart. As she drew closer, the light intensified, and she could feel a powerful, ancient presence stirring within. The song in her chest vibrated with a mixture of reverence and anticipation. Slowly, gracefully, the form within the nest began to rise. It was immense, a creature of breathtaking beauty and cosmic majesty. This was the Sky Serpent, not a beast of scales and fury, but a being of pure essence. Its body seemed to be woven from the very fabric of the cosmos, swirling nebulae for scales, eyes like distant galaxies, and a mane of shimmering starlight. It had no discernible wings, yet it radiated an aura of effortless flight, as if it commanded the currents of the heavens themselves. Its form flowed and shifted like liquid light, yet it possessed a tangible presence that filled the entire eyrie. The Sky Serpent uncoiled, its head rising majestically until its galactic eyes met Elara's. There was no aggression, no fear, only an ancient, boundless wisdom. A soundless hum resonated in her mind, a voice that was not of words, but of pure thought and sensation, echoing the song within her. "You have come, small seeker," the voice resonated, as vast and deep as the cosmos itself. "The song has led you to my eyrie. What do you seek from the Sky Serpent?" Elara, though overwhelmed by the sheer majesty of the creature, stood her ground, her resolve firm. She bowed her head deeply. "Great Sky Serpent, I seek a key." The Ancient One, slumbering beneath the sunken sea, spoke of 3 keys to awaken a world and mend a fractured heart. "My song tells me the first lies here, a whisper wind feather." The Sky Serpent regarded her with its luminous gaze. Its vast form rippled like an aurora. "Ah, whisper wind feather is not merely taken, child. It is a gift, a shedding of the self, given only to those whose purpose resonates with the winds of change, whose spirit is pure as the dawn, and whose heart holds the courage to journey beyond the known." As the serpent spoke, a gentle breeze, impossibly warm and fragrant, stirred around Elara, though the air had been utterly still moments before. The breeze carried with it the faint scent of rain-washed mountains and distant starlight. It was the whisper wind, the very essence of the serpent's breath. "Prove your worth, small seeker. Not with strength, but with clarity of spirit. Show me the truth of your song." Elara closed her eyes, and the melody within her swelled, no longer just a guide, but a declaration. It was a song of her journey, of the ancient being's plea, of the world's desperate need, and of her own unwavering determination. She poured her heart into the silent melody, letting it resonate outwards, a pure, unadulterated expression of her purpose. It was a song of hope, of resilience, of the quiet strength that had carried her across plains and through mountains. As the song within her reached its peak, the sky serpent lowered its head, its galactic eyes softening. The breeze around Elara intensified, swirling around her, lifting strands of her hair. And then, from the very crest of the serpent's head, where its starlight mane met its nebulae scales, a single magnificent feather began to slowly detach itself. It was unlike any feather she had ever seen. Longer than her arm, it was not white, but a shimmering, iridescent blend of silver and faint gold, with an inner glow that pulsed with a gentle rhythmic light. It seemed to be woven from solidified moonlight and spun air, impossibly delicate yet radiating an immense power. As it detached, it did not fall, but floated gracefully on the whisper wind, drifting slowly towards Elara. She reached out a trembling hand, her fingers brushing against the feather's ethereal barbs. It was cool to the touch, and as her skin met its surface, a burst of pure, clear energy flowed into her, invigorating her, sharpening her senses. It felt like holding a piece of the sky itself. The sky serpent's voice resonated once more, its tone filled with a deep satisfaction. The whisper-wind feather is yours, Elara. Guard it well, for it carries the essence of the northern skies, and will guide you through the veils of illusion. It is the first key. Now, the song will lead you to the next. Elara clutched the whisper-wind feather, its radiant light illuminating her face. It thrummed gently in her hand, a living conduit of the sky serpent's magic. Its delicate beauty was captivating, each barb a miniature rainbow, each strand imbued with the silent power of the winds. She felt a surge of profound gratitude, a deep connection to the ancient being before her. She bowed deeply to the sky serpent, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Great One. I will honor this gift and my quest." The sky serpent inclined its majestic head once more, its form beginning to subtly recede, shimmering and blurring as if dissolving back into the starlight and cloud from which it was born. The aerie too began to dim, the luminous blossoms softening their glow, the cloudstone becoming less brilliant. The silent hum that had filled the air began to fade, leaving Elara alone once more on the mountain peak, the vast starry sky her only witness. The song within her, which had been a triumphant chorus, now settled into a steady, confident rhythm. It was still a guide, but its tone had subtly changed, imbued with the power of the whisper-wind feather. The feather itself pulsed softly, a warm weight in her hand, a tangible reminder of her first success. She looked out over the endless ocean of clouds, the distant peaks of the Cloudspire Mountains now seeming small beneath her. Relief washed over her, a wave of exhaustion followed by a rush of exhilaration. She had done it. She had found the first key. But the quest was far from over. The song, though quieter now, had already begun to shift its focus, a new, subtle pull towards a different direction. Not northward this time, but towards the east, a distant, unknown horizon. What lay there? What new perils and wonders awaited her? What form would the next key take, and what ancient guardian would she need to face? Elara carefully placed the whisper-wind feather into her satchel, feeling its gentle warmth against her side. She took one last look at the fading aerie, then turned, her heart filled with renewed purpose. The path down the mountain would be long, but she carried the first key, and the song in her heart, ready for whatever the world held next. Her perilous journey had only just begun its next chapter. Her perilous journey had only just begun its next chapter. The descent from the Whispering Peaks was less treacherous than the climb, yet it demanded its own kind of fortitude. Elara navigated winding paths, her boots crunching on loose scree, her breath misting in the crisp mountain air. As she dropped below the tree line, the world grew greener, the air softer, scented with pine and damp earth. The whisper-wind feather, tucked securely in her satchel, pulsed with a faint rhythmic warmth, a comforting heartbeat against her side. It didn't merely guide her, it sang to her, a silent hum in her soul, pointing her not towards a specific direction, but towards a feeling, a quiet, insistent longing. A quiet, insistent longing. Days blurred into a tapestry of sunrises and starlit nights. She followed ancient deer trails, skirted shimmering alpine lakes and crossed meadows carpeted with wildflowers. The feather's song grew more distinct as she ventured eastward, a gentle melody that seemed to resonate with the very landscape. It led her down from the jagged peaks into a vast verdant valley, cradled between the mountains like an emerald jewel. And there, winding through its heart, was the source of the feather's increasing song, a river. It wasn't a raging torrent, nor a placid stream. It was the Silver Thread River, known for its waters that glittered like spun moonlight and its reputation for holding ancient secrets. As Elara approached its banks, a profound sense of peace settled over her. The river's surface was a mirror, reflecting the sky and the overhanging willows, but beneath its shimmering skin, she felt a vibrant, almost playful energy. The whisperwind feather hummed with a renewed intensity, drawing her along the riverbank. The trees here were older, their roots gnarled and deep, their leaves forming a dense emerald canopy that filtered the sunlight into dappled patterns on the forest floor. The air grew cooler, infused with the scent of wet stone and water mint. Soon, the river narrowed, flowing into a secluded grotto, hidden from the main current by a tumble of moss-covered boulders. Here, the water was unnaturally still, yet it wasn't stagnant. It was lucid, crystalline, revealing a bed of smooth, colorful pebbles below. And from the very heart of the water, a soft, ethereal melody drifted, a counterpoint to the feather's song. It was the sound of 1,000 tiny bells, of water droplets dancing, of laughter that belonged to another world. As Elara stepped into the grotto, a ripple spread across the still surface of the water, and from beneath a cascade of silver foam, a figure emerged. She was tall and slender, her skin the color of river stones warmed by the sun, her hair a cascade of green-gold algae and water lilies. Her eyes, deep pools of emerald, sparkled with an ancient mirth. This was Lyra, a naiad, a spirit of the Silver Thread River, and the keeper of the second key. "Welcome, Elara of the mountains." Lyra's voice was like the gentle murmur of the river, clear and cool. "The whisperwind feather sings your praises. It is rare for one so young to carry such a song in her heart." Elara bowed her head respectfully. "Lady Lyra, I seek a key, one that resonates with the heart of this river. My village, it fades without hope, and I must unlock the door of whispers to find what it needs." Lyra smiled, a ripple of light across her face. "The door of whispers, a heavy burden for a young heart. Indeed, the second key lies here. It is the Sunken Pebble, a stone imbued with the clarity of our waters and the steadfastness of our riverbed. But it does not reveal itself easily. It is not a test of strength, Elara, but of listening, of patience, and of finding the true note amidst the echoes." With a graceful sweep of her arm, Lyra gestured to the countless pebbles that lined the grotto floor, both above and beneath the water. Among these, only one is the Sunken Pebble. It carries the true song of the silver thread. The others are mere reflections, beautiful but empty. You must discern its truth. Elara knelt by the water's edge, gazing into the depths. Every pebble seemed to shimmer, every stone to hold a faint glow. The feather in her satchel pulsed, but it didn't point. It simply encouraged her to listen. She closed her eyes, letting the naiad's gentle melody and the feather's silent hum fill her. She focused on the sound of the water, the subtle currents, the way light fractured through the surface. She stretched her senses, not just her ears, but her very soul, trying to attune herself to the river's song. At first it was overwhelming, a cacophony of gentle whispers, tiny clinks, and the distant rush of the river. But as she quieted her mind, letting her inner song rise to meet the river's, she began to discern patterns. There were rhythms that felt hollow, echoes that faded too quickly, and then a deep, resonant hum, like a single, perfectly struck chord that vibrated not just in the water, but in her own chest. She opened her eyes, and her gaze was drawn to a small, unassuming pebble nestled deep beneath a cluster of water weeds. It wasn't the brightest, nor the most colorful, but it pulsed with that same deep, unwavering hum she had just felt. Slowly, carefully, Elara reached into the cool water. Her fingers closed around the pebble. As she lifted it, the stone glowed with an iridescent light, shifting from pale silver to deep sapphire, then to a soft golden amber. It was perfectly smooth, and its warmth spread through her hand, a feeling of profound clarity and focus. "You have found it," Lyra said, her voice filled with approval. "The Sunken Pebble. It carries the essence of water's truth and earth's quiet strength. Let it guide your sight, as the feather guides your spirit." Elara placed the Sunken Pebble next to the whisperwind feather in her satchel. The two keys hummed together, a harmonious duet, each resonating with the other, their combined energy forming a subtle pull, leading her not eastward, but southward. "Where to now?" Ilara asked, turning to Lyra. To the heart of silence, where echoes speak louder than words, the Naiad replied, her emerald eyes twinkling. To the sunken city of Eldoria, buried beneath the sands of forgetting. There, the third key awaits, a chime that remembers the earth's oldest songs and the light of forgotten stars. Be wary, Ilara. The desert plays tricks on the eye, and Eldoria guards its memories fiercely. With a final shimmering smile, Lyra dissolved back into the water, leaving Ilara alone in the peaceful grotto, the combined hum of the keys, a steadfast compass in her hand. The journey south was a stark contrast to the verdant valley. The lush forests gave way to rolling hills, then to dry, cracked earth, and finally, to the vast, shimmering expanse of the sands of forgetting. The sun beat down relentlessly, turning the sky into an endless blue canvas, and the sand into a sea of golden light. Ilara pulled her cloak tighter, using it to shield herself from the sun and the biting winds that sculpted the dunes into ever-shifting mountains. The whisper-wind feather offered resilience against the parched air, reminding her of the freedom of open skies. The sun-gem pebble brought clarity to her vision, cutting through the heat hazes and mirages, ensuring her steps were true. Together, they sang a quiet, insistent song, a melody of ancient earth and forgotten light, guiding her through the desolate beauty of the desert. Days turned into a rhythm of walking, resting and watching the spectacular desert sunsets paint the sky in hues of crimson and violet. She saw towering rock formations, sculpted by millennia of wind, resembling silent giants guarding forgotten secrets. She learned to read the subtle signs of the desert, finding hidden oases where date palms offered shade and sweet water, gifts from the resilient land. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the sand began to undulate in strange geometric patterns. Ahead, half buried beneath the golden waves, rose the colossal, weathered stones of Eldoria. It was a city swallowed by time, its towers crumbling, its plazas choked with sand, yet its grandeur was still palpable, a testament to a civilization that had once touched the stars. The air here was heavy with silence, a profound quiet that seemed to absorb all sound. As Ilara stepped between two colossal, sand-blasted columns, she felt a chill despite the desert heat. The keys pulsed intensely, their combined songs vibrating with an ancient resonance. The city was a labyrinth of echoing alleys and collapsing structures. Carved into the sandstone walls were intricate symbols, faded murals depicting a people who worshipped light and memory. The feeling of being watched was pervasive, not hostile but deeply contemplative. Deep within the city's heart, where a grand plaza had once stood, a towering structure remained, mostly intact. Its entrance was a dark, yawning archway, intricately carved with swirling patterns that seemed to absorb the light. As Ilara approached, a figure slowly materialized from the shadows within the arch. It was a guardian of Eldoria, a sentinel forged from the very stone of the city, animated by the echoes of its past. Its form was majestic, vaguely humanoid, with broad shoulders and a head like a polished, multifaceted gem. It had no eyes, no mouth, yet Ilara felt its presence keenly, a profound sense of ancient wisdom and silent sorrow. It didn't speak with a voice, but with images and sensations that flowed directly into Ilara's mind. "You seek the echoing chime," the guardian communicated, its thoughts like whispers carried on the desert wind. A fragment of Eldoria's heart, attuned to the earth's memory and the light of forgotten stars. It is hidden where the truest echo resides, not the loudest. But Eldoria's memories are a maze, and its echoes are many. Only by discerning the true from the false, the resonant from the hollow cane. The guardian stepped aside, revealing a vast chamber beyond the archway. It was a cavernous space, carved into the rock beneath the city, its walls covered in luminous, shimmering glyphs. The air was filled with a multitude of faint, overlapping sounds, snatches of laughter, fragments of ancient psalms, the distant clang of tools, the murmur of long-dead voices. These were the echoes of Eldoria, preserved within its stone. Ilara stepped inside. Oh! The echoes were disorienting, each one a phantom limb of the past, vying for attention. The whisper-wind feather helped her maintain a clear mind, its gentle breeze clearing the mental fog. The sun-gem pebble sharpened her focus, allowing her to sift through the auditory chaos. She realized the challenge wasn't to ignore the echoes, but to listen a day deeper, to find the single pure vibration that was the echoing chime. She moved slowly, her hands brushing against the cool, ancient stone. She closed her eyes, letting the combined hum of her keys guide her. The echoes swirled around her, tempting her with vivid illusions of Eldoria's vibrant past, bustling marketplaces, grand ceremonies, the quiet contemplation of scholars. But the keys kept her grounded, reminding her to seek the truth beneath the illusions. She concentrated on the feeling of the earth beneath her feet, the deep, steady pulse that had been Eldoria's foundation. The feather sang of the light that once shone here. The pebble of the clarity needed to perceive it. Slowly, painstakingly, Elara began to filter the echoes. She sought not the grandest memory, nor the loudest sound, but the most resonant, a quiet, persistent hum that felt like the earth's own heartbeat, imbued with a starlight glow. Deep within the chamber, almost imperceptibly, she felt it. A faint, almost silent vibration, distinct from the myriad voices. It emanated from a small alcove, barely noticeable amidst the grand carvings. Elara walked towards it, her heart pounding with anticipation. Nestled within the alcove, resting on a pedestal of polished obsidian, was the echoing chime. It was a small, intricate bell-like object, crafted from a strange, shimmering metal that seemed to absorb and reflect the faint light in the chamber, like a captured constellation. It hummed with a deep, earthy resonance, a sound that vibrated through her bones, a song of endurance and forgotten radiance. As Elara gently lifted the chime, the cacophony of echoes in the chamber began to recede, replaced by a profound, reverent silence. The guardian of Eldoria appeared at the entrance to the alcove, its form radiating a soft, approving light. "You have found it, Elara." Its silent voice resonated in her mind. "The light of Eldoria's heart now resides with you. May its song guide you to the truth." With the echoing chime safely nestled in her satchel, beside the whisper-wind feather and the sunken pebble, Elara felt a profound sense of completeness. The three keys now thrummed together, a powerful symphony of air, water, and earth, of spirit, clarity, and memory. Their combined energy created an undeniable pull, drawing her not further into the desert, but back towards her homeland, to a place hidden even from her own people. The keys guided her swiftly, across plains and through forests, a journey that felt both timeless and urgent. They led her to the very edge of the ancient woods that bordered her village, a place rarely trodden, where the trees grew thick and gnarled, their branches interwoven like old friends. This was the place where the creeping blight, the silent despair, seemed to originate, seeping out from the deepest shadows. And there, in a secluded glade bathed in an otherworldly twilight, stood the Door of Whispers. It wasn't a door of wood or stone, but an archway of living, gnarled branches, intricately carved by nature itself with symbols of life and decay, of blooming flowers and fading leaves. It pulsed faintly with the blight's sickly shadow, a subtle corruption that seemed to emanate from its very core. Elara approached, her heart a drum against her ribs. She saw 3 depressions in the archway, perfectly shaped for her keys. With trembling hands, yet with unwavering resolve, she placed the whisper-wind feather into the uppermost groove, its lightness calling to the air. Then the sun-gem pebble into the middle, its clarity yearning for the water. Finally, the echoing chime into the lowest, its deep resonance grounding it to the earth. As the last key settled into place, the Door of Whispers shimmered. The gnarled branches twisted and intertwined, not closing, but dissolving. The air within the archway began to swirl, not into a passageway of light, but into a vortex of pure, unadulterated shadow. A silent, gaping maw that seemed to absorb all sound and light. This was not a physical door, but a gateway to a realm beyond, the source of the blight. Elara took a deep breath, clutching the empty satchel close. The keys were no longer objects. They were part of the door, part of the gateway. She stepped forward, into the swirling darkness. The transition was instantaneous. She found herself in a realm of profound desolation, a colorless, silent void where nothing stirred. The air was heavy, thick with a palpable sorrow. There were no trees, no sky, no ground, only an endless expanse of gray mist and an echoing emptiness. In the very heart of this desolate realm, suspended amidst the mist, was the source of the blight. It was not a monstrous creature, but a shimmering nebulous being of sorrow and forgotten dreams, a weaver of silent despair. It was immense, ethereal, constantly absorbing the faint wisps of joy, hope, and memory that drifted from the world beyond the door. It wasn't malicious but profoundly, utterly sad, its very existence a slow, unintentional drain on the vibrancy of Elara's world. It was feeding on the world's forgotten songs, believing them to be lost forever. Elara felt the weight of its despair pressing down on her, threatening to extinguish the light within her. But then, she remembered the mountain's whisper, the river's song, the desert's quiet strength. She remembered the journey, the guardians, the essence of the keys now residing within the door, connecting her to the world's fundamental magic. She didn't draw a sword or prepare for battle. Instead, she closed her eyes, reaching deep within herself. The song that had guided her from the very beginning, the melody in her heart, began to swell. It was a song of remembrance, of beauty, of the shared joy of existence, of the unwavering resilience of life. And as she sang, the three keys, still within the door of whispers, began to resonate with her. The whisper wind feather sang of forgotten melodies, of the boundless freedom of dreams. The sun-gem pebble shone with the clarity of renewed hope, piercing through the mist of sorrow. And the echoing chime resonated with the deep, unwavering rhythm of life itself, reminding the weaver of the world's enduring pulse. Elara's voice, amplified by the keys and the raw magic of the door, filled the desolate realm. Her song was not a challenge but an embrace. It was a lullaby of comfort, a balm for ancient sorrow. The weaver of silent despair, touched by such a pure, resonant melody for the first time in millennia, began to tremble. Its nebulous form shimmered, not in pain, but in a profound, unfamiliar longing. Slowly, gently, the weaver began to dissolve. Not into nothingness, but into shimmering motes of starlight, its despair transmuted back into pure, nascent dreams. As the last vestige of its sorrow faded, the colorless realm itself began to transform. Hues of emerald and sapphire, gold and rose bloomed from the mist. The silence was replaced by a gentle hum, a symphony of growing things, of distant laughter, of fresh breezes. Where the weaver had been, a wellspring of vibrant, pure energy erupted. It pulsed with an astonishing, joyful light, a cascade of pure, unadulterated life force. This was the heart of the world's song, the very essence of joy and vibrancy that the weaver had unknowingly stifled. Elara felt the warmth of it, a profound sense of connection to all living things. The door of whispers, now gleaming with a pure white light, beckoned her back. She stepped through, carrying the faint pulsing light of the heart of the world's song within her own chest. She emerged back into the glade, but it was no longer shadowed. The gnarled branches of the door of whispers, now infused with the key's magic, glowed with a soft, benevolent light. The blight that had clung to the edges of the woods, the silent despair that had seeped into her village, was receding like a bad dream. The air was fresh, vibrant, filled with the scent of blooming wildflowers. Elara returned to her village, not as a weary traveler, but as a silent beacon. She didn't need to explain, to recount her epic journey. The change was palpable. The blight had lifted. The villagers who had slowly forgotten their laughter and their hope began to stir. A child hummed a forgotten tune. An elder smiled, a genuine smile, for the first time in years. The colors of their clothes seemed brighter, the air itself tasted sweeter. Elara, no longer just a girl who heard whispers, but a guardian of the world's song, knew her work was not done. She didn't hold the heart of the world's song as a relic, but as a living part of herself. She taught her people to listen again, to the rustle of the wind, the gurgle of the stream, the quiet hum of their own hearts. She taught them to nurture hope like a fragile seedling, to share joy like a bountiful harvest. The whisper-wind feather, the sun-gem pebble, and the echoing chime remained woven into the living door of whispers in the glade, silent reminders of her journey, humming with the vibrant energy of the heart of the world's song. Elara, now standing taller, felt a deep peace. Her perilous journey had indeed just begun its next chapter, not one of seeking but of nurturing. And as the stars began to appear in the twilight sky, casting their gentle glow over her village, she knew that the world would sing again, louder and clearer than ever before.